Hi guys. Today we're going to do lesson 32-3, the quadratic formula. Today we're going to learn how to derive. Yes, our learning target is to derive the quadratic formula. And then we're going to solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. Generalizing a solution method into a formula provides an efficient way to perform complicated procedures. You can complete the square on the general form of a quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, to find a formula for solving all quadratic equations. In other words, I'm going to take the formula and I'm going to solve it for x. In order to solve for x, I need to make y is equal to 0. So that's why we have it set to 0. And when y is equal to 0, your x value is your x-intercept or your solution. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to start off. I'm going to write a little bit small. So it's going to be ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Okay. So we're going to start off by just kind of thinking about, I want to get rid of the c because I want the x terms by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract c from both sides. I'm going to rewrite the equation. So I have ax squared plus bx is equal to negative c. Now the next thing I want to do is I do not want a coefficient in front of x. So right now we have an a. We don't know what a is, but whatever it is, we need to get rid of it. So to get rid of the a, we're going to go ahead and divide both sides by a. And those cancel out. I end up with x squared plus bx over a is equal to negative c over a. So now what I want to do is I want to use completing the square to make this into a perfect square trinomial. So in order to do that, I have to remember the way we did this. We said we're going to take the middle term and divide it by 2 and then square it. So the taking the middle term, dividing it by 2 means I'm going to multiply it by 1/2. So that's like taking this times 1 over 2. And 1 times bx is bx, and 2 times a is 2a. So what we're going to do is we're going to have, well, not dx, just a b over a. So 1 times b is, start my explanation again. So we're going to have 1 times b is equal to b, and 2 times a is equal to a. So we're going to have b over 2a, and then we're going to square it. Okay. So that's I'm going to rewrite this as x squared plus b over a x plus b over 2a squared. Now, of course, whatever I do on one side, I have to do the same thing on the other side. So that's going to equal to negative c over a plus b over 2a squared. Now on this side, I have a perfect square trinomial, so I can just go ahead and write the binomial squared. So that's going to be x plus b over 2a, all that, squared. And on this side, I'm just going to go ahead and reorder these, but at the same time, I'm going to square this second term. So b squared is on the top. 2 squared is 4. A squared would be a squared, so it's 4a squared. And then I'm going to do minus c over a. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead now and do the square root of both sides. So when I do the square root of both sides, I'm going to end up with x plus b over 2a is equal to, and I'm going to have something in the square root. Oh, I'm going to have all this in the square root. But before I put it down over here, I'm going to go ahead and see what I can do about combining those terms. So over here, I'm going to look at what I have here. I have b over 4a squared, so that's b squared over 4a squared, minus c over a. Now, they both have an a, and so I want to make them look the same, so I need to multiply this by 4 times a. And what I do on the top, I do on the bottom. So I end up with b squared minus 4ac, all that over 4a squared. So that's what I'm going to put inside the radical for right now. So in the radical, I have b squared minus 4ac, all that over 4a squared. Now, what I want to do now is take the square root of the top and the square root of the bottom. Instead of having it in one bracket, I'm going to put it in 2 different brackets. So it's going to be x is equal to b over 2a. I say equals, I was wrong there. It's x plus b over 2a is equal to, and on the top we're going to have the square root of b squared minus 4ac. On the bottom I'm going to have the square root of 4a squared, but 4a squared is a perfect square. So the square root of 4 is 2. The square root of a squared is a. I'm almost done here. So now I'm going to get x by itself, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the plus b over 2a. So I'm going to subtract it on both sides. So let me just rewrite that. So x is equal to minus b over 2a plus the square root of, I should say plus, it's actually plus or minus, b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And you notice we have a common denominator here. So I could rewrite this as everything's over 2a, and it's going to be negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. And that is your quadratic formula. To apply the quadratic formula, make sure the equation is in standard form and identify the values of a, b, and c in the equation, and then substitute these values into the quadratic formula. If the expression under the radical sign is not a perfect square, write the solutions in the simplest radical form or use a calculator to approximate the solution. All right, so remember we started off with the formula for the standard form of the quadratic function, and then we set it equal to where x was equal to, solved for x, but we still had our a, b, and c in the formula. Well, those are the coefficients in the standard form. And so we're just going to plug those into the quadratic formula. Now, remember, we want to always write down the formula before we use it. So the formula we're going to plug into is x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all that over 2a. And we're just going to simply plug in the information. So the formula we have is x squared plus 3 equals 6x. We want to first get it into standard form. So that means we want everything on one side. Whatever's left over on the other side will be a 0. So that's going to be x squared minus 6x plus 3 equals 0 because I subtracted 6x from both sides. Now I identify my a, b, and c. So my a value is equal to 1, my b value is equal to negative 6, and my c value is equal to 3. And those are the values that I'm going to plug in. So x is equal to the negative 6. So it's negative 6 plus and minus the square root of negative 6 squared minus 4 times the a value, which is 1, times the c value, which is 3, all that over 2 times the a value. So let's go ahead and begin to simplify. X is equal to positive 6 plus or minus square root of, well, negative 6 squared is going to be a positive 36. That's going to be minus 4 times 1, which is 4. And then 4 times 3 is 12, so it's minus 12. All that over 2. I can simplify this further. 36 minus 12 is going to be 24. So it's going to be x plus, or x is equal to 6 plus or minus the square root of 24 over 2. And then we can look and see whether we can simplify the square root of 24. Square root of 24, of course, could be rewritten as, let's see, that could be 4 times 6, or 4 is a perfect square. So that's going to be 6 plus or minus, what is this, the square root of 4 times the square root of 6. So that's going to be equal to 2 times the square root of 6. All that over 2. And I can simplify. Remember, this is 6 over 2, which is 3. And 2 times the square root of 6 over 2. So it's going to be 3 plus or minus the square root of 6. So that's going to be our answer right there. And then, of course, we would put that into the calculator to get what our 2 answers are. But remember, what we're doing, what we're putting in the calculator is x is equal to 3 plus the square root of 6, or x is equal to x is equal to 3 minus the square root of 6. So it's very important we understand that's what we're actually putting in here. And then when you put it in the calculator, it's going to end up with x is equal to 5.45, and x is equal to 0.45 or 55. I put equal signs. What I should have put here is approximately equal to, because we have an irrational exponent there, or I'm sorry, because we have an irrational number here with the square root of 6, my number here is going to be irrational. So anytime I stop the decimal to approximate, it's going to be approximately equal to. So this is the way you would write our answer if we do not have a calculator. And if we do have a calculator, we can go ahead and do this. Actually, the answer over here with the radical is actually a more accurate answer. All right, so let's go ahead and do the try these. Try these A. So that's going to be 3x squared is equal to 4x plus 3. And what I want to do is I want to get everything together on one side, and the other side is going to be nothing left over, so it'll be 0. So I'm going to subtract the 4x and the 3 to get rid of them on this side. So I have 3x squared minus 4x minus 3. I don't know why I put an x there. And that's equals 0. And so that allows me to identify A is equal to 3, B is equal to negative 4, and C is equal to negative 3. So I'll go ahead and use my formula. X is equal to negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC. All that over 2 times A. All right, so now we just plug in the numbers. So x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 3. All that over 2 times 3. Let's go ahead and start to simplify it. It's going to be a positive 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 squared is going to be 16. And remember, I have a negative and a negative, so I have an even number of signs. So that means my answer is going to be positive here. And it's going to be 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 3 is 36. So then I'm going to end up with 6 on the bottom. So it's going to be x is equal to 4 plus or minus the square root of, well, that's going to be 16 and 36, which is going to be 52. Okay. So 52. All that over 6. So we look to see whether we can simplify the 52 at all. And so 52, we'll do our factors of 52 here. 2 and 26, 2 and 13. So I do have a perfect square of 4. So it'll be 4 times 13. So it's going to be the square root of 4 times the square root of 13. And so that's going to be x is equal to 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 is 2. That leaves me the square root of 13. All that over 6. So now we can go ahead and simplify this. Remember, this 6 goes with each of those. So that cancels to be 2 over 3. And this one ends up being 1 over 3. So it ends up being 2 plus or minus the square root of 13 over 3. And again, so this would be x equals 2 plus the square root of 13 over 3, or x is equal to 2 minus the square root of 13 over 3. And you can put that in the calculator in order to get a more detailed answer. But this is all they want, that answer right there, or this breakdown. All right, so let's go ahead and do B. All right, so that's going to be x squared plus 4x equals negative 2. I'm going to get everything on one side, so it'll be x squared plus 4x plus 2. So I add 2 to both sides, equals 0. Means my a is going to be equal to 1, my b is going to equal to 4, my c is going to equal 2. The formula is x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all that over 2 times a. We'll go ahead and plug in the information. X is equal to negative 4 plus or minus square root of 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 2, all that over 2 times 1, which is just 2. So x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus square root of 16, and that's only one minus sign here, so it's minus 8 over 2. So x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus 16 minus 8 is 8, square root of 8. Square root of 8 simplifies to negative 4 plus or minus, that's going to be 4 times 2, so it's 2 times the square root of 2 over 2. Let's simplify each of these terms. X is equal to negative 4 over 2, which is negative 2, plus or minus 2 over 2 is 1, so it's the square root of 2. So that is our answer right there. All right, check your understanding, item 1. Solve using the quadratic formula. So again, we'll go ahead and look at this one. This is 3x squared minus 5x plus 1 equals 0. So it's already set up. So a is equal to 3, b is equal to negative 5, and c is equal to 1. The formula is x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac, all that over 2 times a. Plug in the coefficients. So x is equal to negative 5, where'd I go? Negative 5 plus or minus square root of negative 5 squared minus 4 times 3 times 1. All that over 2 times 3. So it's going to be x is equal to positive 5 plus or minus square root of, well, negative 5 squared is 25. I only have one minus sign, so it's going to be a negative. And 4 times 3 is 12. All that over 6. So x is equal to 5 plus or minus the square root of 25 minus 12 is going to be, let's see, 13. All that over 6. And that's going to be my answer right there. Item 2. So again, it's quadratic formula is going to be x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all that over 2 times a. All right, so the equation that we're given is x plus 6 is equal to negative 8 plus 12. And again, I want to get everything, let's say x squared plus 6 equals negative 8 plus 12, negative 8x plus 12. So again, I want to get everything over onto one side. So I have my x squared. I'm going to take this negative 8. I'm going to add 8x to both sides. So I'm going to add 8x. And then I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. So 6 minus 12 is negative 6. And that's going to be equal to 0. So with that, I'm able to identify my a. A is equal to 1. B is equal to 8. And C is equal to negative 6. All right, so let's go ahead and plug this into the formula. X is equal to negative 8 plus or minus square root of 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 6. All that over 2 times 1. So we'll go ahead and start simplifying it. That's negative 8 plus or minus square root of 8 squared is 64. It's going to be a plus because I have a minus and a minus. And 4 times 6 is 24. All that over 2. Go a little further, it's negative 8 plus or minus the square root of, well, 16 and 24 is going to be, 4 and 4 is 88. Square root of 88. And so that's not a perfect square, but I look to see whether or not I can simplify that. And so I go ahead and go through my perfect squares to see whether this can be simplified. I cut this in half and get 44. 44 is not a perfect square. The next one down is 36. 36 times 3 is too much. So I go down to the next one after 36 is going to be 25. That doesn't work. So I go to the next one down, which is 16. Let me try 16. 88. 16 divided by 88 is going to be, let's try 5 is going to give me 80. Yeah, so that's not going to work. All right, so 16 doesn't work, so the next one's 9. 9 doesn't work because 9 times 9 is 81. So that takes me down to 4. So 4 is going to work. So it's going to be 88 divided by 4 is going to be 22. So that's going to be x is equal to negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 22. So it's going to be 2 times the square root of 22. All that over 2. And so I'll simplify further. Negative 8 over 2 is going to be negative 4 plus or minus 2 over 2 is 1. So the square root of 22. And so that's going to be our answer right there. Okay, so I'm going to leave the rest for you to do as homework. Don't forget, if you come across any questions, you can come to the virtual tutoring on Zoom on weekdays at 3 o'clock.